Welcome one and all throughout time and space for this episode of Weebs on the Weekends, the podcast where we break down the anime news highlights of the week and give a retrospective look at an anime that premiered 10 years ago. Today's episode we will cover properly the first week of October 2022, after which we will give our thoughts on whether to resurrect or rebury the 2012 anime franchise Magi, the Labyrinth of Magic. My name is Sam Martinez. I'm a part-time weeb, full-time automobile mechanic, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Jay Johnson, part-time weeb, full-time English language sensei. Now, ladies and gentle listeners, we will be transitioning to our anime. We're now talking about it. If you would like to listen to our full episode, again, look us up on Spotify, iTunes, and Google Play so that you can listen to our entire episode, get the full Jay and Sam experience. With today's franchise, it sort of have a special place in my heart because I can't remember how I got into this. It was either the manga or the anime at first. I remember I was exposed to them around the same time, but I ended up reading the manga a little bit more during university, and I ended up stopping because of university's life. Jay, what is your exposure to Magi, the Labyrinth of Magic?
Well, of course I've heard about it because it's like one of the, and yeah, it kind of made me realize about how pretentious anime fans are. Is like, yeah, it's like, okay, you're trying to sound like a pretentious anime fan, but yeah, it's like always talking about the big three anime like Naruto, Bleach, and One Piece, and it's like, yeah, we haven't had a good big three since then. And it's like people talking more recently about Jujutsu Kaisen and Demon Slayer and what would be potentially Black Clover or My Hero Academia. It's like, yeah, there's never been something to replace it. And I was like, throughout the 2010s, there's like good shonen. Like, there's like, Magi is like one of those that kind of snuck by for 2 seasons, I believe. Like the first one was 25, and then next one was 25. But
it even got a spin-off season series as well.
Yeah, the Sinbad one. And it's like, yeah, you can't be in the anime community without hearing about Magi, or at least seeing like all the cool magic system designs. I don't know how they function inside the anime themselves, but yeah, like you've seen Sinbad designs, like all the character designs in Magi are iconic, even if you've never seen Magi before. Even like Morgana, or I think that's how you pronounce her name, like red hair, Morgiana, yeah, red hair and shackles around her wrists and arm. It's like, yeah, everything in Magi is like familiar if you've never seen it before. But yeah, this is my first time sitting down to watch an episode though. So
all right, awesome. It'll be good to hear your experience on it and what your thoughts are. Having, I guess being coded to recognize it and being able to see the characters in action, and you'll be able to tell us like whether or not you think that they deserve to have that level of notoriety, so to speak. To give a brief synopsis on the series Magi, we are basically in a world where dungeons appear. These dungeons are notorious for people entering and never coming out. However, if you do enter a dungeon and you do clear it, the dungeon disappears, and a person that is left is usually having large amounts of wealth and may even have some power and influence after the fact. We follow these characters, Alibaba and Aladdin, where Alibaba is working for this merchant. He runs into Aladdin, who is this wandering youth, and Aladdin sort of helps push Alibaba to pursue his goals and his dreams. And we see later on that Alibaba and Aladdin end up going into a dungeon that had appeared in the town that Alibaba was currently residing. That dungeon had been there for the last 10 years. Nobody has been able to clear it. And during their time in the dungeon, we learn that Aladdin is known as something as a Magi, which is alluded to being an advisor to a king or the king. And afterwards, we see both youth sort of proclaim that they're going to go on to an adventure and explore more of the worlds of this world where dungeons exist in order to explore different kingdoms and to make a kingdom of their own. And we get to see how their friendship develop along the way and the different obstacles and friends that they meet along the way as well. And as we said before, this work is highly influenced by the work known as 1001 Nights in Arabia. And again, we have characters like Alibaba and Aladdin, characters from that work, and Morgiana, which I've just learned recently, is also a character from that same work as well. And one thing that I've also forgotten to mention too is like at the end of a dungeon, the boss of the dungeon, quote unquote, so to speak, is a jinn or a genie, and the person that cleared the dungeon gets a wish completed by the jinn and also gets a something special along the way as well. So we get, and as we had mentioned before too, other characters such as Sinbad make an appearance, and we get to see how they influence the world that they're within as well. So again, the studio is A1 Pictures. The original source was a manga. The genre is action, adventure, fantasy. It's a shonen manga, as Jay had mentioned earlier, and the rating is surprisingly PG-13. The places where you can watch this work is Funimation, Hulu, Crunchyroll. I think you can also see it on Netflix. I can't remember off the top of my head, but Jay, as I said, I sort of grew up with this franchise. I read the manga in tandem, and I watched a lot of the anime as well. And it's sort of hard for me not to get giddy, again, because it has a special place in my heart. As I had watched the first 3 episodes, I wanted to keep on going, but I took a step back and I was like, you know what? Instead of watching this, maybe I should, instead of continuing watching this, maybe I should watch the other series that's made by the same work, Orient, right? And so I went and I watched the first 3 episodes of Orient. I have some thoughts on comparing these two works that are very, very strong that I want to save for later on in the series. So I would rather first get your thoughts and your what your experiences were in this work, because you said that you had a lot to say as well.
We talked about Shinobu Otaka before. She's the mangaka of both this and Orient. Yeah, we talked about it when Orient was premiering last year. Oh, Orient's also coming back for season 2 this season
Yes.
as well. Yeah, okay, sorry, I just made the connection. Yeah, so she has a very interesting ability to write these kind of contained coming to age adventure stories, and it's not Shonen Jump that Magi was originally published in. It's Shonen Sunday. It's kind of like the somewhat not competitor. They're in the same family, but it's like adjacent to what we know as Shonen Jump titles. And I was like, I can see why, because it is so odd watching the first 3 episodes of this and like knowing the prestige that it carries, is because it does not do a good job of establishing the world in what I would expect to be a very highly compact fantasy story. And I kind of know where the story's going because I've kind of seen the training arc that Aladdin goes through later on. But for like such a beginning character, it's like hard to believe that this would be a shonen protagonist, young boys. Again, the demographic that this would be aimed at would be imagine themselves as, because Aladdin is such a
He's an odd duck.
He's an odd duck, but I always assumed that Aladdin was like hundreds of years old, because he has this Meliodas from Seven Deadly Sins compulsion to grope people. So,
yes.
It only happens once or twice in these 2 episodes, but I also seen so many images of it going a lot further in ridiculous comedic kind of ways, and
It,
it does.
it's funny too because whenever he does that, his body turns into that of like the Shin-chan character, right? Like he physically looks different from everybody else in the world whenever he does
Yeah.
it.
So it's like a noticeable thing that's out of place. So like
Mm-hmm.
there's like comedy to it as well. Like Aladdin and Alibaba's like they have like this very brotherly like kind of back and forth and bond like right at the start, and it's like really endearing. But it's like one of those weird things of like I always assumed that he was Meliodas' age, and not to spoil that if that is a spoiler, but like Meliodas is like thousands of years old,
Mm-hmm.
so I always assume Aladdin was like hundreds of years old as well as being a conduit of a genie.
Just to tack on that, because like that is a mystery that they do open up with that. Um, Aladdin. This is one thing that I didn't mention earlier. Was like Aladdin doesn't really know anything about his past. He has this sort of amnesia type thing, and one of the characters, one of the jinn that we run into, mention something along the lines of him being like a reincarnation of Solomon. So this work also plays a little bit into the lore that the Jinn have along with Solomon. I'm not too familiar with that sort of lore. I know that there was a lot of mystery and things along with that, with like the actual person of Solomon and how he might have had mystical beings as Jinn working underneath him. So, but they do touch on that. So, like you said, like that feeling of Aladdin being a lot older than what he actually is. That is a very good cue that you picked up there. That was also represented in Meliodas.
Right, because there's a lot of like underlying things. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
why again it's not really a Shonen Jump title, is because a lot of that stuff is so like nuanced, and like it's weird that like an Arabian story is being adapted in this way. We talked earlier this year about another Arabian story, but I can't remember.
Oh, I think it was supposed to be a movie. Yeah, I think it was supposed to be a movie because it was a joint venture with like an actual company in Saudi Arabia as well.
Right, exactly. So like with the small things like the dungeons, and again, I kind of cheated because I went beyond the 3 episodes because I was kind of
Hmm.
really curious, and not to say that it's a judgment call about the 3 episodes and the passed or failed, but it is interesting that this is another dual story of like dual protagonists. Is that
Hmm.
Alibaba is actually given like the more main role than you think. Like the magical wielder guy is like you get his story fleshed out of being a slave and but like having a good heart, but getting so desensitized kind of to the violence going around him, and like finally standing up for himself and like doing the sacrificial play, and Aladdin coming in to swipe down or save him at the last minute to kind of just prove that yeah, you have a good heart, you just kind of need the power to pursue your ideals. And I think that's like a very touching shonen kind of lesson to sell in these first 3 episodes. So I guess I'm talking myself back into liking it, but I was more feeling like one, like people underestimate how good Magi is because of the first 3 episodes. It's like it doesn't really pull you into the world that I guess intimately, because you have like the Jin showings. Well, you have one of the Jin showing up. How he
Technically, too.
yeah, but like
Yeah.
the manifestation of one, because a lot of even like his Jin, Alliance Jin is like somewhat of a mystery as well. But yeah, we can talk more about that. But there's so much to talk about again, so I'm kind of glossing over a bit. But it's definitely a vibe, these first 3 episodes.
So I would like to pick your brain on why you don't think the world was fleshed out a little bit, or at least like how, or at least why you think that there was an issue with them introducing the world of Magi.
Right, because I think it's one of those things that we talk about a lot, is that the 3 episode rule only really works with 12 episode seasons, and
Yeah.
the first season of Magi was planned out to be 24 episodes. So when you watch beyond the first 3 episodes, you see that there's a villain character introduced, there's Sinbad shows up, like you
Hmm.
mentioned in the opening. It's like a lot beyond the 3 episodes. So if you do a 6 episode test, I think it does do what a 3 episode test should do,
Yeah.
but it doesn't really establish. I mean, it doesn't even really talk about the magic system. which I'm assuming that's like one of those intricate things that they're not going to top load the story with. They're kind of selling you on the characters first and then serving the magical elements of it in later on, because magic is a very scarce resource, as it seems, and it's something that people still think is like mysticism to it, or at least in the class of the higher arc of the society. So like there's a lot of subtle writing to it, but it doesn't feel like a shonen way of presenting it. I think that's what I was trying to get at.
Oh, okay. Knowing what I know and like going back in watching the first 3 episodes, I realized like there is a lot of foreshadowing, and I sort of wanted to take this time to compare it to Orient as well, because Orient, they do the dual lead as well, and the story is a little bit different. Whereas in Orient, it's very much a Japanese story, whereas Magi, it's again, like it has like that more Arabian Nights sort of feel to it. I remember like after watching Orient, I didn't feel the same way that I did about Magi. And it's not because of a nostalgia type thing. Right after the first 3 episodes, I was just sort of trying to think and reflect on why that is. As I mentioned earlier, there were some mystery boxes that were presented in the first 3 episodes of Magi. So you learn that Aladdin may be the reincarnation of Solomon. You don't know necessarily why. You learn of something as learn about the title of Magi. You don't really know what that means. There's probably some more machinations that's there. You have Morgiana's character, which is a race of superhuman, and they can basically kick people through walls. They can step into walls, so they can run up walls, and yet she's in the servant class, even though she is physically superior. It's like, how did that happen? That sort of thing. You also are introduced with a mystery box with Alibaba. Even though he is a servant, he comes across as a lowborn. He has all of this knowledge of royalty. He knows how to read. He knows how to read other languages. He knows proper fencing techniques. You don't really like you have like these different mystery boxes, whereas with Orient, the nuts and bolts of Orient is a land that's similar to Japan. They're overtaken by these monsters that are essentially that are essentially considered oni, and they are sort of brainwashed the population to think that the oni are good, and they are forced into labor camps. And the main characters that we run into, one is the family of was the family of a miner, and the other one is a family that was born into a family of warriors that had fought back against the Kishin, or the Oni. The thing is, like, we learned that the people who were in line of the warriors who fought back, they're essentially treated lower than dirt, things like that. They were discriminated against, and the person that was a miner, he wants to be one of the people that fought back. That's known as a bushi, but he can't push himself to vocalize that in front of people just because he's afraid of what others think. It's very clear cut. There's no real mystery that's given. Very much like any other shonen show that we see. Both have been training in secret for so many years, and they're given the opportunity to kill actual oni and pull the wool off the people's eyes. It's like, hey, we're actually being ruled. I would say that there is also some things that you see in the two main characters. They sort of push each other in order to better themselves, whereas like one's able to push the other to solidify his convictions and actually live out to be a bushi, a warrior, and the other one, the one that comes from the line of the warriors, he learns to accept his past. And it's very similar to what we see in Magi, where Aladdin sort of pushes Alibaba to do what he wants to do. Alibaba thinks himself as a coward, but Aladdin reaffirms him as like, no, you're not a coward. Whenever your ideals were made fun of, you laughed it off. Whenever other people's lives were in danger, you went out and you did what was necessary, right? So you get that same sort of bromance or that healthy friendship where they push each other in the right direction. However, in Orient, again, there's no real mystery boxes, or there's no real gravitation to me to explore the world. It's sort of like, oh, here are the rules that are laid out, here are the things that are happening, but there's not enough questions that pull me into it, not like with Magi. And very much like in both works, they do foreshadow or lay down groundwork for stuff that's going to happen. So, like, for instance, where we see Aladdin use that spell on Morgiana to sort of put her in place. The one that looks sort of like a gravity spell almost. So, like, with that one, as you said, like, Aladdin gets into a training arc where he learns how to use magic. And that spell, it turns out to be one of the very basic spells. And we get to see more of the magic system. And I guess that's why I sort of like it too, because like they treat the magic a little bit harder than most people do. Like, you see the consequences of having to use magic. Aladdin gets tired. He can't use it 24/7. There's obviously a drawback to it, and there are consequences that are being shown when he uses up too much magic so much magic so quickly. And not only that, but you also get a good parallel of what the people in power are of that society, where I think it's Lord Jamil, I believe is his name, where we see somebody who's basically the lord of the town in how he treats the people that are his servants or his slaves. And so you get more sympathetic towards Alibaba, and because what we see Alibaba do for others, and you sort of push for him to want to become a better in his, or not be better, but you want to push him to his goals so that he can be a proper ruler. And they also mentioned Sindria, but I'm starting to digress, and I realize I'm on a soapbox now. But just sort of comparing those two, because as you said, Magi was done. Like, Magi is a good quality anime that sort of went underneath the radar, and the manga for Magi has completed. Essentially, there is a last third of the series that can be done, but they haven't done it yet. So, like, they've done the first two parts, which is Magi, the Magic of Labyrinth, the Labyrinth of the Magic, and then Magi, the Magic Kingdom. There's also that spin-off series that was Sinbad, but they did not animate like that last third, and the last third has been done, I believe, since 2017. And I sort of wanted to get your thoughts on that. Why do you think that they had not finished animating the series?
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Well, for what I remember, it was definitely around 2018. I believe that was when it premiered. Did you mention that, 2018?
No, I did not.
Okay. Yeah, so I think that's an important date because of what A1 Picture was doing around the time. I think they were transitioning into like this new wave of technology, and I think it got caught up in one of those paradigm shifts of the company, like with its leadership, is that one is a prequel story for a story that has already wrapped. So again, it's like telling a story essentially out of order. It's like what more can be done around it. So again, it's like it has a very short fuse, and with how A1 Pictures like does their productions, they're very high value and high cost. So it's like probably interest reigned in the property, given that there was already a definitive ending. So it's like going back and telling the before story when there was nothing going forward. So there was no real good push from a marketing standpoint.
Oh, no, no! Like, there was more to this to the story. Like, it picks up literally after Labyrinth of Magic. They just like like there's a definitive ending in the series. I think the only prequel stuff is probably Sinbad.
No, that's what I mean. It's like Sinbad only ran for like not even 20 volumes, as I recall. It only had like a couple of years of publication. But that's what I mean. So like the second season is called Kingdom of Magic, and again, that's exploring again the how big the world is, how big it is, because again, you can, I don't want to spoil anything, but yeah, I think there was a limited fuse to what Magi could have been tapped into. So I think it was just maybe too many familiar beats, or A1 Picture again. I think it was just a switching of what they wanted to be under their catalog at the time.
Oh my goodness, because it's just like, again, just comparing Magi and Orient, it's night and day. I mean, Orient is done very well, but with A1 Pictures, as you said, it's high quality. It's so smooth. The action and like the sword fight with Jalil and Alibaba. It's not the most fancy thing, but it's done very, very well. And it's just like, this is the type of action fluidity that I am here for. And it and when they did some of the CGI, I'm trying to think, there was one scene where I noticed that there was CGI that was used, but it wasn't completely jarring. Like, it was a little dated, but it was still done fairly well. Again, as you said, just like a testament to the high quality or the high caliber that A1 Picture does. Going, at least like seeing the studio that did Orient ACGT, they're the ones that did Freezing. There are some scenes that were done fairly well, but for the most part, it was just meh compared to what I've seen with Magi. So I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little butthurt that the rest of Magi did not get animated. But again, before I digress even further and promote Magi any further, did you have before giving your thoughts on whether it passed the 3-episode test and the good old question resurrect or rebury, did you have any other thoughts or comments that you wanted to share regarding Magi before we start answering those final questions?
I'm glad you brought up the comparison between Orient and this, because again, what I mentioned earlier about Shinobu's work is that she does the coming of age story pretty well, and I think what she was definitely trying to do with the second, because she only has about 3 publications, this, Magi, and something else. But yeah, like she was probably tending towards more of a straightforward story, like less complex, because I think that's what makes it the superior version, which you talked about in great detail about the writing portions of it, because Orient came out in Shonen Jump magazine, no, Shonen Weekly magazine, which again is not Jump, but it's the close enough equivalent to it. So again, keeping with like getting closer to the maybe ideal version of a shonen title, is like simplifying it, making the characters like one note or 2-dimensional or something that can be easily followed through. Again, the Arabian setting is probably what kind of put Magi in its place, and I think that's probably again what kind of limited the storytelling, especially with Japanese audiences, because like if you look at A1 Pictures, what came out around the time Magi ended was Sword Art Online Alicization. So you can obviously see what kind of took up their, their not budget, but took up their kind of production mentality for what kind of action that they wanted to center on. Same thing with Kaguya-sama that we just talked about starting in 2019. So that's where A1 Pictures shifted to. But yeah, it's a very interesting case of, I think Magi just caught up in the tide of the like shonen turnover, because that was like the 3rd or 2nd season of My Hero Academia, and when you consider that against Magi, they're just 2 diversely different stories. So I think it's just that Magi was caught up in a time where it should have ended earlier or even started earlier. But yeah, I'm kind of giving it, I'm usually not on the fence like sometimes you are, Sam, but it sounds like you're going to resurrect it. And I'm going to say, just on the basis of just the 3 episodes, I can't really give it a pass, because so much of a well-told shonen story that it's competing with like some of the greats, but because it's competing with the greats, like committing 50 episodes as a recommendation to someone with everything that we're listed out that we're going to be watching this season, I can't really say that I would recommend it. If there was a lot of downtime that someone had, I would say, oh yeah, check out Magi. It's a really decent shonen. But other than that, I'm going to have to say it can stay reburied because I wasn't getting too much of the magic system in the first 3 episodes. I wasn't given too much of a cultural touchstone with it as well to say like, oh, this is an Arabian story, to feel like that historic weight of it being a necessary story to tell. And the characters were endearing enough, but not technically memorable outside of their character design. So I'm going to rebury it.
Ah, that hurts my heart. It hurts so bad. So, just to recap, like, did it pass 3 episode test, or did it fail that too? Because I know you said you're not resurrecting it, but you said if it was like for 6 episodes, you'd probably pass it.
Yeah. I think that's
Okay.
it because if I watched the 6 episodes, which I did go to the 6 episode,
Yes.
so the 6 episodes did pass because again it introduces Sinbad and the villain, quote unquote villain, as well as expands on a lot of things that the 3 episodes were missing out on. So yeah, 3 episode fail, 6 episode pass.
And like now that you're thinking about it, or now that you had mentioned it, it is. I would say that with Magi is sort of the in between shonens, whereas like typical shonens, typical shonens that people would suggest for people to watch, would be something that's short, say like Soul Eater or Full Metal Alchemist, where the episodes they're not more than 50, maybe 24, a little bit more than that, or like Gurren Lagann, where it's like I consider them short, but like to say the average person or somebody that's more casual, that would be considered longer. Whereas Magi, it's a little bit longer than that. They are probably, if including Sinbad, if you want to go and watch Sinbad as well, it's probably reaching up to 70. So I would say that that's probably like the jump off point before you would try to go to some of the more gargantuan franchises like Hunter x Hunter or One Piece. It's sort of like, I would say like that's sort of a litmus test on whether or not you can hang on for some of those longer franchises. Oh my goodness. I'm trying not to, but the nostalgia of the characters and how well they're written, because what the author does with Alibaba, Morgiana, and Sinbad, oh my goodness, Sinbad is so freaking cool, man. And I think you might have mentioned it before, but he's just one of those cool people that's just cool without trying to be cool. And he has, it's like he's a good person too, but he also has that sort of real world sense. I'm sorry, I'm just gushing right now, but it's just like I really like this the story and what they do with the characters. For me, it passes the 3 episodes, I guess, mainly because like as I said before, I saw some foreshadowing to what they try to allude to or try to tap onto like later on in the series. Like even at the end of the 3rd episode, it sort of forces you to explore the world because you think that Alibaba and Aladdin and Morgiana, like after they leave the dungeon, that they would be in the same place, but everybody's all spread out, right? So you to keep watching and to see them come together, like all 3 characters, to see where their stories converge again. Like you have to, like it sort of pushes you to keep going that way. Now I'm a bit on the fence too because it is a little bit longer than normal. So it's not maybe not necessarily good, but I would say like it's just I would still resurrect it because I think like it's just casual enough to where, as you said, you can watch it leisurely. You have a good amount of time, you have a good amount of episodes, but the story itself, as you said, like as you keep watching, it does sort of compel you to keep going as it passes the 6 episode test. So I would say that I would resurrect Magi, and it was bound to happen that we would have a resurrect and a rebury, but still, all in all, I'm glad that you were at least able to enjoy your exposure to Magi. And so, like, one quick question. No. I think you answered this before. You said that you think that the characters don't deserve the notoriety that they mainly get that just because of their iconic, or at least like their unique looking character designs, correct?
Oh no, I was just saying in
Oh,
the
okay.
terms of the first
Yeah.
3 episodes, it's like a very
Oh, just 3 episodes. Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
it's like a very interesting way to introduce characters because again, it's like
Mhm.
subtlety in the writing that you're like curious about things, but again, it's not
Mhm.
like a bold statement of who they are because they're kids. So it's like they have room to grow, and again, like, that's part of revisiting things after 10 years. It's like you're older as a viewer, so you're like, well, kids, you should know what you want, or you want to tell an older story eventually. But yeah, it's just a thing of viewing it from like you saw it when it was premiering, and then I'm seeing it now for the first time. So
Mhm.
I think that's the main distinction between our 2 point of views.
I know, like I said, sometimes I was putting on the nostalgia glasses. I did my best to take them off. That was our. Do you have any other final thoughts or comments before we wrap things up, Jay?
No, it's good. I'm going to go watch. I didn't recommend it, but I'm going to go watch it.
Awesome. So that was our thoughts on the anime franchise Magi, the Labyrinth of Magic. And join us for next episode as we ride alongside some cute girls doing cute girl things in wartime as we watch the anime Girls und Panzer. Now, Jay, that's all that I have. What have you got for us today?
All right. So you mentioned it earlier about Alibaba, and it's coming from the 1001 Arabian Nights story. So I thought I would read the original lyrics from Arabian Nights from the Aladdin movie by Disney. Originally, the lyrics were changed after protests by Arab Americans that felt that the lyrics from the original song was painting the Arabian culture as barbaric because they used the word barbaric in the song. So I wanted to just read the original verse to see how you feel about the original wording to the Disney opening.
Okay.
All right, so it opens up with, and I will try not to sing it. Oh, come from a land, from a faraway place, where the caravan camels roam, where they cut off your ear if they don't like your face. It's barbaric, but hey, it's home. Where the wind's from the east and the sun from the west, the sands and the glass is right. Come on down, stop on by, hop on a carpet, and fly to another Arabian night.